This is not a video that I wanted to make, but it's one that I felt I needed to make. This is the story of the most difficult thing I've ever built. And no, not from a technical perspective. Overall, this build was fairly straightforward. The difficulty in this build stems from the circumstances surrounding it. To tell this story, we have to go back to the beginning of 2020. Many of you, in fact most of you that watch these videos, don't know me on a personal level. I don't do woodworking full-time. This is a hobby for me, and I like sharing my knowledge and what I've learned with other people. That's why I make these videos. In reality, I'm a small business owner in a totally different field, and up until last year, things had been going really well. I was doing a job that I was told I shouldn't have. I was making more money than I was told I could ever make. I was seeing parts of the world I was told that I would never go see. And I was managing a business that, frankly, I was told would be a failure. It's important for me to explain that I'm aware that my story comes from a place of privilege. I'm cognizant of that. I understand that during COVID, many people didn't have safety nets like I did. Many people struggled in ways that put them on the brink of poverty, and that's not something I dealt with. I had a different struggle, but I never want to equate my struggles to things like food insecurity, not being able to pay the mortgage, wondering where you and your family are going to sleep that night. I'm often bothered when people who do come from a place of privilege fail to mention that. Everybody has struggles. It doesn't matter if you're living on the street or if you're living in Beverly Hills. And every story and every struggle is equally important. However, I think it is very important to mention and understand and realize when you come from a spot where you have more safety nets than others. Privilege comes in many forms. It can be anything from your gender, color of your skin, things that you were born with, or it can be things that you've acquired in your life, such as financial safety nets or success in the business world. I know I'm very thankful for the various privileges I've had, and understanding privilege is not wrong in any sense. But being aware of privileges that you're afforded that others might not have is what's very, very essential. So with that said, I hope that clears up any misconceptions that this story might portray. When COVID hit, I was no longer able to go to work. I won't get into the details of my real job, but simply put, my job cannot exist in a world dealing with the pandemic. They simply cannot exist together when people are in their homes and can't be in large gatherings. Honestly, the first few weeks were great. I hadn't taken time off or a vacation in years, and getting to spend extra time with my family and be at home was amazing. One of the privileges I mentioned earlier was financial security. I was able to stay at home and not go back out into the workforce and find a different job, because for years and years and years I had saved. And I understand that this is a luxury that not everybody had and most don't have. I found myself at home, and at first, things seemed all right. Pretty early in the pandemic, a friend of mine reached out and asked me to build 2 nightstands for him and his wife. And I was excited to, 1, have something to build, and 2, get paid to build something. Like I mentioned earlier, making furniture and making different projects and making videos on YouTube isn't my job. This is just something I do for fun. It's not something I've really tried to monetize. At this point in my life, I had already turned one hobby into a job, and I didn't want to do that with making things. This was something I wanted to keep for myself, a hobby that I wanted to enjoy. However, when I got the call to build something and get paid to do it, I was excited. I could bring in extra money. It would take away future financial stress, because early in the pandemic, we had no idea how long this would go on for. I was less optimistic than most. I figured that by the end of 2020, I would start to be able to get back to work. And by spring and summer of 2021, things would be back in full swing. It turns out that even that was optimistic. When the pandemic hit, I had a different approach than many had. It's something that I stand by, and I still do to this day, whether right or wrong. This was a decision I made, and frankly, only I can be accountable for my decisions. Many began to panic when, collectively as a society, we realized the scale and magnitude of this pandemic. But I chose a different approach. I chose to hold the ship steady instead of making a ton of changes to my life and my business plan. Time and time again, we see that history repeats itself, and we look at global crises on a global scale and a scale of all of recorded history. We see that more often than not, things return to normal very quickly after a disastrous event. So for me, it was foolish to run out and make a bunch of changes, when in my estimation, we would soon look back at COVID as a small bump in the road. This approach did leave me with one problem, a problem that I'd never had before, and that's time. I had a lot of time on my hands and didn't feel as though I could really go out and do that much. I obviously had this project to complete, but what I didn't realize is every day I was sleeping in a little later. Every night I was going to bed a little earlier. I found myself inside for days at a time, and I found that I wasn't really connected to the people I was normally connected with. This took a toll that I frankly didn't realize for quite a while. I initially got started on this project and made a lot of progress. But after a while, it would sit for days at a time out in the garage, and I couldn't get myself out of bed to do anything. The more work that I had to do, the less I wanted to do it. This was a new experience for me, as I'd typically been motivated and productive, and getting things done had never been a problem. I found myself increasingly isolated, and I didn't realize the toll it was taking on me mentally and physically. Not only was I becoming increasingly isolated at this time, but the contact that I was having with people in my life became increasingly negative. I was told to go find a new job, go start a new career, go back to college. And it seemed like nobody outside of my home supported my decision to hold the ship steady. And time again throughout history, I've seen returns to normal when everybody thought the world was falling apart. And I've learned that history repeats itself, so that's the approach that I took. This made me feel as though people found my business illegitimate. It made me question all my life choices that I had ever made. But this idea of going to a college and acquiring massive amounts of debt and owing money and time to an institution for 4 years just to maybe try something new, that seemed ridiculous to me. Over several months, I was finally able to get myself out of bed enough to finish this relatively simple project, and I put it in the mail, and I thought the story was over. But unfortunately, the shipment and these nightstands were completely destroyed in shipping, and that was frankly synonymous to how my life felt at the time. Like everything that I had worked for had been destroyed. So over the next few months, I repeated the process and made them again. Only time will tell if I made the right decisions. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But one thing that I did learn throughout all of this is how important it is to take care of yourself. And if you haven't taken care of yourself during this pandemic, open the blinds, go for a walk, call your loved ones. And from firsthand experience, I know that that's easier said than done. I understand how hard it can be to take care of yourself during this time, but it's important to realize that until you take care of yourself, you'll never be able to take care of others. All in all, it took me over a year to build this project, and it should have taken nowhere near that amount of time. Maybe you're watching this today and you can relate. I'm no expert, but what I can tell you is that you won't get better overnight, but every day can be better than the day before. And when you hold the ship steady, focus on daily improvement, we can all get through this together. So all that to say is, don't be too hard on yourself. If this has been a tough time for you, which I'm sure it has been for everybody, take your time, recover one day at a time, and eventually you'll look back on this as a distant memory. Throughout this pandemic, I've lost friends, I've had personal health issues, I've seen a thriving business that I started in high school really fall to nothing until this is all over. Despite all of these hardships, I really believe that this steady ship mentality is the only way forward. Until we make it through this, it's important to not compare yourself to how others are doing. Focus on your goals, focus on your dreams, focus on your path forward. And one day, hopefully one day soon, we'll all be able to see each other again. And maybe just like these nightstands, through trial and adversity and things getting destroyed, you can make something beautiful.